we can be helped by seeing what giving shows about our hearts. See, our giving can be like this probing internal scan that goes into the depth of our grasp of the gospel and its connection to our relationships. And so I pray today that we will be helped as we look at two descriptions of giving, two answers to the question of what is giving? And these are not the only answers, obviously, to that question. These are not the only descriptions. We outline some others from verses 10 and 11 and other passages, and we'll find out more later from verses 17 and 19. And I should tell you now, I'm not going to get to 17 today. Your bulletin says through verse 17. We're only going to get to verse 16 today. But let's allow two descriptions of giving from verses 14 to 16 of Philippians 4 to reach into our hearts with gospel purposes to reveal and to transform us. Note the first one of those. Giving is a beautiful gospel partnership. Giving is a beautiful gospel partnership. As Paul returned to this gratitude for the Philippians here in verse 14 where we pick up, he described the beautiful gospel partnership that was demonstrated in their giving. And we note that first as a first point. Giving is that beautiful. There's a beautiful gospel partnership. Read verse 14 again to see that. We will need gospel partnership to flourish in affliction as it did for Paul and the Philippians. And we should want that because giving is a beautiful gospel partnership. And it should be, because God has given us all we ever need in Christ. And so it's only fitting that the gospel would free us up to be glad givers. And that's why our second point from verses 15 and 16 just makes sense. Note, secondly, giving is a sacrificial gospel response. Point number 2, giving is a sacrificial gospel response. Look at verses 15 and 16 again, where Paul recalls the ongoing sacrificial response of the Philippians, their generosity as gospel partners. He says in verses 15 and 16, "You yourselves also know, Philippians, that at the first preaching of the gospel, after I left Macedonia, no church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving, but you alone. For even in Thessalonica, you sent a gift more than once for my needs." So Paul knew this, obviously, and they knew this. The Philippians did. But he was recalling it to highlight it. This was proof of what he was saying. This beautiful gospel partnership, this was proof of it. And he addressed them as Philippians to say, hey, let's reminisce together. Let's appreciate with affection this enduring partnership that we have. And this is another way of thanking them, of honoring that partnership he does here. Their giving, he says, began at the first preaching of the gospel. That is in Acts chapter 16 where it records that Paul preached and God saved them. Right? And God started that church there. They had responded to the gospel, and immediately their faith was proven by their generous support of Paul as he got driven out, and they supported him to go preach somewhere else. Let me just review that chronology for you just a minute. So Acts 16 tells of Paul's ministry in Philippi. That's in northern Greece, in the province of Macedonia. And then Acts 17 says he went from there to Thessalonica and Berea, also in Macedonia. And then he went to Athens, which is in the south. And Athens and Corinth were in the southern Greek province of Achaia. And then Acts 18 says that Paul went from Athens to Corinth in Achaia. And then Silas and Timothy came down from Macedonia to Corinth and brought that gift. And so that's how we can connect Acts 18:5 with 2 Corinthians 11:9, that Silas and Timothy were the brothers from Macedonia who brought the gift to Corinth. And that gift, Philippians 4:15, was from the Philippians. And Paul was remembering it. The gift in Philippians 4:15 he's talking about after he had left Macedonia. That was a gift from the Philippians to support his ministry at Corinth. And as I stopped and thought about this, it's interesting that Paul had to write at least two letters to Corinth, to the Corinthians, and actually 2 letters to the Thessalonians also, to address errors that crept in. Errors that crept in soon after he had planted those churches. But his letter to the Philippians was not until 5 years later. After he'd already written those other 4 letters to the other churches, 5 years later he wrote to the Philippians. And why? To thank them. Primarily, that's his focus, to thank them for their generosity, for their gift sent by the hand of Epaphroditus. That was why he wrote to them. That's the heart that we should want. That's the heart changed, confirmed, cleansed, transformed by the grace of the gospel. We want our hearts to display that kind of giving because it is a beautiful gospel partnership and it is a sacrificial gospel response.